Sunday after Sunday, the people of Ireland have thrilled to their own distinctive games, hurling and Gaelic football. They are played nowhere else except among the Irish abroad, and they are woven into the fabric of Ireland, its history, its politics, its daily life. They are more than games, they're a mass movement, and one that has lasted for 100 years.
Sunday after Sunday, Jamart and Trihuva, ag Carach and Hinjeg Sanliche.
They are played nowhere else except among the Irish abroad, and they are woven into the fabric of Ireland, its history, its politics, its daily life. They are more than games, they're a mass movement, and one that has lasted for 100 years. Sport, as mass entertainment, is a product of the 19th century. It came in many countries with the growth of cities and railways. Today, it's a worldwide commercial industry. But in Ireland, the purpose was not sport alone, nor was it commercial. For the national games grew out of a broad, popular revival. After the famine that killed 1 million, the immigration of 1 million more, the evictions and bitterness of the land war, there was a resurgence of spirit. It led to a struggle for independence in politics, industry, language and literature. And it began in the field of sport. The driving force was Michael Cusack from Carn in County Clare, teacher and journalist, athlete and agitator. Cusack called a meeting for Hayes' Hotel in Thurles, County Tipperary. There, on the 1st of November 1884, he and a handful of others founded the Gaelic Athletic Association, the GAA. Within 3 years, Cusack could write, "It has swept the country like a prairie fire." From the beginning, the GAA meant different things to different people. For athletes, a chance to organize their own games in their own way. For revolutionaries, a convenient cover and a recruiting ground. For the police and the British authorities of the time, a new area for surveillance. But for the mass of the people, it was, and has remained, sheer entertainment. The games had been there since before the GAA, but now the rules were standardized into something of special appeal to the Irish temperament. With 15 players aside covering the field and no offside rule, the play can be fast and flowing. A unique scoring system also keeps the interest alive. A ball over the bar is worth a point, and 3 of them equal a goal. Points can be scored from over 50 metres in football, even further in hurling. So the scoring is high, and fortunes can fluctuate throughout the game. Central to the action is the struggle for possession. Every player marks another, struggles for supremacy that are separate contests within the overall contest. All the more exciting when the individual breaks free. At every moment, the crowd hopes for a flash of individual brilliance, the magic goal snatched out of the air with a flick of the wrists. The honour of winning is the only reward, but it's enough to inspire great passion. And both games are played with hard, physical contact. When the excitement mounts, the players forget about personal safety. And when the excitement boils over, they're inclined to forget about the rules as well. Fouls are more frequent in football. How to dispossess a player without assaulting him has been a problem for 100 years. Yet for games of such physical toughness, serious injury is rare, and most of the knocks are shrugged off. In hurling, the protective helmet has greatly reduced the risk. Even the badly injured are reluctant to leave the field and insist on coming back to see the rest of the game. Players are expected to reconcile two contradictory aims, winning and sportsmanship. For the most part, they do. And dirty play in a major game is rare enough to cause a national outcry. Gaelic football, like its counterparts in other countries, began as something of a cross-country brawl. Hurling has a purer and an older pedigree. First recorded in the sagas of pre-Christian Ireland, it was developed under the landlords of the 18th century, and it was a particular passion of Michael Cusack. Is hurling a fine art, he asked, and he answered in the style of the period. When I reflect on the sublime simplicity of the game, the strength and swiftness of the players, their apparent recklessness of life and limb, their magic skill, their marvellous escapes and the overwhelming pleasure they give their friends, I have no hesitation in saying that the game of hurling is in the front rank of fine arts. The GAA was a major boost to the morale of 19th century Ireland. It gave the people something of their own, which they could organise for themselves. To Cusack, it was a cure for the slave mentality that afflicted the nation. What was the GAA established for, he once asked? Was it not to emancipate the working man? But it came to mean even more than that, for the founders took one crucial decision that made it an integral part of the community. They ruled that the club should be based on the smallest unit of social life, the parish. It was this that rooted the GAA in every heart and street and townland. It made it an extension of the family and the home. The Limerick hurler Tommy Quaid marries Breda Grace of a renowned Kilkenny hurling family.
Thanks, Tom.
The GAA is a community of players, officials and followers. It congregates not only to watch the games, but also to celebrate and to mourn the landmarks of family life. Weddings and funerals alike are coloured by the games, their personalities, their lore and their symbols. A major inter-county game in Croke Park today has all the appearance of big-time sport anywhere in the world. The best of these players are household names around Ireland, celebrities and superstars in the modern fashion. But the players are all amateurs. These men must train for top-class competition in their leisure hours and whatever they can snatch from full-time jobs. When the game is over, there are no cheering crowds to greet the players, only wives and children, family and friends. The hurler, or the Gaelic footballer, can play only for the place where he was born, or where his work has taken him to live. Win or lose, it's back to normal life and work again on Monday. This is what has made the players and the games so much a part of the community. When the GAA was founded, most of that community was living in rural poverty. The establishment of a club brought colour and excitement, and a new focus for the rivalry between parish and parish. Many parts of rural Ireland were then Irish-speaking, as some still are, like Letchermore in the Connemara Gaeltacht.
Nu met de vaart zit het. Wat zeg je dan? Ah ja, zit het. Ah ja.
Wallo year of Goleir. An Gidal Shees, on the action this weekend, the results were as follows.
100 years later, in an urbanised Ireland, the club remains the central and most important unit of GAA life. The fortunes of the local teams are still a focus, whether it's senior, intermediate, junior, minor, or the many grades of juveniles.
And our senior hurlers were unfortunately beaten by St. Lawrence O'Toole's in the senior hurling league this morning.
Local allegiance is the strength of the GAA. Only a few of the 32 counties can realistically hope to win a national championship. But the rivalry between clubs to be the champions of the county itself provides fierce clashes and high excitement everywhere. The Cork County Senior Hurling Final of 1983. St. Finbarr's in blue, one of the powerful city clubs, seeking its 4th championship in a row. And Middleton, a country club that hasn't won the county final since 1916. Hurling has been the premier sport in Cork City since before the GAA itself. So the people here are connoisseurs as well as partisans. But everywhere in Ireland, the county final is a source of fresh folklore and tradition. No matter how many All-Irelands a player has won, he gives his all in a county final. The result is a historic victory for the outsiders, Middleton. They had been trying to achieve this for 67 years. There are countless clubs around Ireland that have lived for 100 years in the mere hope of similar success. The first president of the GAA was Ireland's most popular athlete of the time, Maurice Davin of Carrick-on-Suir, County Tipperary. And the Gaelic Athletic Association was not so called without reason. Running, jumping and throwing were the people's favourite sports. Many Irishmen held world records, and some were to win Olympic medals for other countries. But competition was not open to everyone. Irish athletics were controlled by an upper-class body whose rules excluded mechanics, artisans and labourers. This meant, in effect, most of the people. The GAA's initial success was in organising athletics meetings in opposition to the controlling body. They drew large entries and vast crowds. It was a few years before hurling and Gaelic football became the premier sports that they are today. The GAA continued to run athletics until 1922, when the last Irish National Championships under their control were held in a Croke Park that had a permanent cycling track. Hill 16 had by then assumed its now familiar shape. And the events included the standing high jump, in 1922, the GAA took over another traditional Irish game, handball. It was then an open-air sport, played when the weather permitted, mostly in summer. Today, handball is mainly an indoor game. It's played by people of all ages throughout the year. It is also the only truly international of the Irish games. The 1984 World Championship in Croke Park had teams from Ireland, Britain, Australia, the United States, Canada and Mexico. The Masters Championship is for players over the age of 40. In the World Doubles Final, Pat Kirby of County Clare, one of the greats of the game, gave a virtuoso display to win almost single-handed.
Good match, gentlemen.
The world singles champion was Merv Deckert of Canada, and the disappointed runner-up was Alfonso Monreal of Mexico. Cumann Camogiachta Ngail was founded in 1904. Edwardian dress was no help in a sister game to hurling, though goalkeepers may have found it useful. Camogie is still run by a separate organisation, but very close to the GAA. It is strong mostly in the counties that excel in hurling. Kilkenny and the Black and Amber are playing Dublin, who went on to win the centenary year All-Ireland. The exchanges can be as tough as in hurling, and the skills equally good. Limerick City on the day of a Munster hurling final. The counties do battle on the long road to the All-Ireland. The county as a unit originated in the 13th century as part of the Norman conquest of Ireland. It meant little to the people until the coming of the GAA. Then it acquired an identity that inspired a fierce allegiance. Sunday afternoon in Ireland is the excitement of inter-county hurling and Gaelic football.
Official programme, 50 pieces. Thank you very much, sir.
It's the big day out for individuals and families. A day of travel, sometimes over long distances. A day of sandwiches and flasks, oranges and chocolate bars. Win or lose, it's a day to remember. But county fervour grew slowly. It grew, like everything else in the GAA, from the parish and the club. The All-Ireland football final of 1920, delayed until 1922 by the War of Independence. Tipperary with the Black Hoop defeat Dublin. The Dublin county team was selected by its outstanding club, St. Lawrence O'Toole's. This had been the general practice until then. But from now on, the county board began to make the selection. This broadened the interest, and it created the county fervour that we know today. With the GAA, the counties acquired a colour, a song, and even a nickname. The Kingdom, the Banner, the Short Grass. What county are you from? As a way of making contact with a stranger. For all the rivalry, the GAA, in its first century at any rate, has escaped the international excesses of crowd violence. Opposing fans can still watch the game side by side and discuss it afterwards over a drink. But winning is the primary aim. The city of Kilkenny, the morning after the county has won the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship. The decorations that were put up weeks before in hope are now the symbols of victory. The civic authorities prepare an official reception. In the evening, the team will return from Dublin with the McCarthy Cup. When they do, thousands will be here to greet them.
Pleasant duty this evening to chair this reception to the senior hurling team.
First come the speeches from the Mayor of Kilkenny and the President of the GAA, Paddy Buggy. But what the crowd really want is to acclaim the heroes.
I'd like to call on Noel Skate. I now I call on Frank Coven. King Billy. Christy Hefford.
Next morning, the captain, Liam Fennelly, and 5 of his teammates have a call of their own to make. The players bring the cup to St. Patrick's National School in their home parish of Ballyhale. However strong the county allegiance, the parish ultimately is where they belong.
Gorgeous, August, foiled the Cundis Scullins, that's an old tune of the Ashling Reach. It was hard but honest, I suppose.
Hard but fair.
Well, that was the way we are with that here. Nice to see Frank coming along with you.
This indeed is where it all happened. This is where these players started their competitive careers, as so many before them in schools throughout Ireland. It's a debt that they fully acknowledge, and they pay it back to the children of today. The GAA has thrived on the glamour of inter-county competition and on the ruggedness of club rivalry. But it would never have succeeded as it has without the support of generations of school teachers. The All-Ireland hurling final for second-level schools between St. Finbarr's Ferris of Cork and St. Kieran's of Kilkenny. The diocesan colleges have long been strongholds of hurling and Gaelic football. So have the primary and secondary schools of the Christian Brothers, an order that has made a special contribution to the growth of the games. Semple Stadium Thurles, the All-Ireland hurling final for vocational schools. Today there are GAA competitions in all sections of society. The army, the Gardaí, factories and business houses, the banks, and the staffs of psychiatric hospitals. But few are as passionate as the inter-university competitions that began in 1911. The Sigerson Cup final of centenary year was won by University College Galway in maroon from University College Cork. The network of loyalties is complex in the GAA. Parish rivalries are forgotten for the sake of the county, and county rivalries are forgotten for the sake of the college. But however the allegiance may change, the emotion of winning is still the same. In centenary year, the GAA returns in pilgrimage to the birthplace of its founder, a herdsman's cottage in Carn in the Burren of County Clare.
We are gathered here today to pay tribute to a man called Cusack, a dreamer who was not content merely to dream, a visionary and an idealist who was yet a man of action.
As he and Gaelga hugged on Mishnagus Maud the V again, dinner reeve and down.
The passions of the national revival in which the GAA was born have coloured it ever since. For the games were entangled from the start in the web of Irish hopes and aspirations. The aspirations of the Irish revival were very broad. Independence not just in politics, but in culture, industry, and labour too. One of its main planks was the revival of the declining Irish language. And with Cusack a native speaker, the language revival became part of GAA philosophy. It still is, though some of its practice is a matter of form, like printing the players' names in Irish above the English. But the language has a living presence too.
An chéad rud ar an chlár ná comóra an chéad, agus mar is óiltíomh thosaí mar...
The Ulster Provincial Council of the GAA holds regular meetings exclusively in Irish. With 6 of the province's 9 counties part of the United Kingdom, the need to affirm an Irish identity is more pressing here than elsewhere.
It's come from Hampshire. You call it a Yanu law flock come out law green war.
Kay Yanis and Squeevio and Obershonalig.
Ta a couple of samples in Shohagen, Shin Jerkan Club and Shaw Shin as Aiden Dirk.
Choshin to Tom Narkaru is just soon to Norskia, although a national chapter and Fluda
The use of Irish in the GAA will not revive it in the country as a whole, but the commitment remains. And Irish is still the automatic language on ceremonial occasions.
It's more on an Ordamsa and Cornshaw Glocka. It's more on an Arm and Cornshaw Glocka.
It's more on an Ordam and Cornshaw Glocka.
When the captain is a native speaker, it's more than just a ceremony, and the crowd knows it. Joe Connolly in 1980, when Galway won its first hurling All-Ireland in 57 years. In Victorian Ireland, there was a growing swell for independence from Britain, and from the start, the GAA became embroiled in politics. To capture mass support, Cusack chose the first patrons from among the leaders of moderate nationalism. Dr. Croke, Archbishop of Cashel, the most popular Catholic prelate of the time. Charles Stewart Parnell, Protestant landlord and hero of the Home Rule movement, whom Cusack called the aristocratic leader of the Irish people. And Michael Davitt, in Cusack's words, the democratic leader, who fought for the rights of tenants to the land. So the GAA was launched on the turbulent seas of Irish politics. Within 2 years of its foundation, the GAA was split when the Fenians of the physical force tradition tried to take it over. But the moderates regained control. Then the national divisions after Parnell's divorce scandal hindered it for a decade, but it recovered. From these upheavals, the GAA learned a valuable lesson: how to remain united while retaining within it the widest range of nationalist opinion. No other movement of the time was to achieve such continued unity. After the Easter Rising of 1916 came the War of Independence. The GAA was not involved as an organisation, but many of its members were. When a Galway City GAA committee was photographed in 1920, the volunteers among them wore their uniforms. And ever since Hurleys had been carried in Parnell's funeral, they were a symbol of insurrection and a useful substitute for drilling when guns were in short supply. But all of this made the GAA suspect to the British authorities, with tragic results. Tipperary with the Black Hoop playing Sligo in the All-Ireland semi-final of 1922. On November 21st, 1920, half of this Tipperary team were here in Croke Park in a challenge match against Dublin. British intelligence agents had been assassinated that morning. In retaliation, British forces attacked Croke Park and opened fire. A Tipperary player, Michael Hogan, was killed along with 12 others. That was Bloody Sunday. But the greatest test was yet to come. In 1922, the treaty with Britain divided Ireland as nothing before. Even families were split, and when the passions boiled over into civil war, thousands were excommunicated by the Catholic Church. Some of the bitterest and bloodiest conflict was in County Kerry. In 1925, Kerry in the dark shirts beat Dublin in the All-Ireland final of 1924, delayed by the Civil War and its aftermath. The stars of the Kerry team were John Joe Sheehy in the centre of picture and Con Brosnan behind him. But these men were political enemies. Brosnan, an officer in the new Irish Free State Army, Sheehy, a Republican insurgent who had spent the Civil War on the run. Yet, throughout that period and after, they played together on the Kerry team in a kind of amnesty that prevailed in much of Ireland. The playing fields and council chambers of the GAA were the only ground on which Civil War opponents were prepared to meet. A contribution to the healing of those wounds that would be difficult to exaggerate. In the tensions of Northern Ireland today, the GAA is still tossed by political storms. These are the games principally of the Catholic minority, and loyalists associate them and their symbols with the threat of united Ireland. Also, after more than a decade of violence, the GAA has once again attracted the attentions of the British Army. The focus of this tension is the village of Crossmaglen in South Armagh, where the British Army has seized part of the local GAA pitch for a military barracks.
Currently the soccer and club agus in the Henry agus Ahandina Hagen Gideon Park.
The pitch and the people have suffered over the years. Sometimes major destruction, sometimes petty harassment.
This is another cut in the fence by the Army since the last match about 2 weeks ago, Gene. And I know we've been up with it for 10 years, but is there any point in us continuing to replace fencing at all?
The efforts of GAA officials to keep the games free from the surrounding conflict are all the more difficult when it intrudes even on the under-12s. It took more than players and spectators to make the GAA. It also needed a network of officials to run its affairs at many levels: club, divisional, county, provincial and national. But like the players, they too are amateurs, working unpaid in their spare time.
Okay, could we just have a rundown on the arrangements so far the final tomorrow? Can't all the players fit they are? Everybody, yeah.
Those against now, please. Those against.
The great annual get-together is Congress, which moves around the 4 provinces. In centenary year, it was Ulster's turn at Queen's University in Belfast. The GAA is now a vast organisation with a presence in almost every parish. Yet, it has retained its voluntary character. When Sean O'Sheachan became chief executive in the mid-60s, he had a full-time staff of only 4. His successor, Lima Mulvihil, now has a headquarters staff of 21. But the thousands of others are volunteers, some of them among the greatest of hurlers and footballers.
Personally, I feel that, as Sean Murray from Louth has said, there is a problem, and this would be one way of solving it.
The GAA is a microcosm of Irish life. And, like Irish attitudes, it has changed slowly and cautiously. But the pressures of the modern age have given urgency to the need for change.
So, with those few words out there on, I move the motion on behalf of Longford.
There are wrongs and grave wrongs.
And I would ask that they would maybe intensify their efforts.
And refer decisions in detail
so that it can be completed.
Not just refer to Central Council and back again here next year.
The element of Catholic ceremonial at big games was abandoned in the early 60s. In 1971, in this hall, after decades of controversy, the GAA abolished Rule 27, the ban on foreign games. But other rules are likely to last while the conditions that created them remain. In the GAA, discussion is often charged with emotion.
And I hate to have to say this, but I'm forced to say it. The good Christ who made us all must come on earth again. If they're not prepared to do it themselves, it will take a miracle.
The GAA began as a kind of folk tradition in an Ireland that was poor and mainly peasant. Today, the vast majority live in urban areas with a modern international lifestyle. Yet, the GAA still thrives, and is due to the continuing strength of its basic unit, the club. St Finbarr's in Cork City was Centenary Club of the Year. It's among the best, but it's not exceptional. The characteristic club of today has a large social hall for functions and for the overflow of subcommittee meetings, and a bar where the replay is always better than the original game. The club has become a general sports and leisure centre for all ages and both sexes. But where are the new players to come from? Today, the GAA is in competition not only with the glamour of international games, but with the growing apathy towards playing any game at all.
Here's the ball now, please. Here's the ball now, off you go.
Come on, 4 here, are you ready? Look, you stand there now with him. You go in the back there.
Is it against me?
No, wait a minute, you'll be a bit too big for him. You come out of there.
There is now a strong emphasis on youth schemes in the GAA.
Are you ready now, so? Go!
But even in a traditional hurling stronghold like Cork City, the Blackrock Club must work hard for its new recruits.
Johnny, tell you there now about the young fellas from Ballintemple. They're the young fellas now that we're looking to bring down.
Well, we're particularly interested in the Ballintemple area. Are you satisfied with the selection from Ballintemple?
No, they're still a point around the best we got off yet, you know?
Yeah. Well, I would suppose that on Tuesday and Wednesday of this week now, that this canvass will be carried out fully. Yeah, maybe after the under-21 training on Wednesday night, we'll get together and do this canvass.
Possibly, yeah.
The biggest test for the GAA is the growing city of Dublin, with nearly a quarter of the island's population. The games have always been strong here, and the success of the county in the 70s and 80s has given Gaelic football a certain glamour. But in the spreading suburbs are vast new communities with no tradition of their own. Ballyboden St Enda's is one of the youngest clubs in the GAA. It is set in the growing south side of Dublin City at Belt. The huge growth of Dublin has come largely from provincials flocking to the capital. But they have brought with them a GAA tradition that they are passing on to the next generation of native Dubliners. In this club, the chairman is from County Cork, the secretary from Mayo, the treasurer from Kilkenny, and the vice-chairman from Clare. But the promotion of the games is no longer enough for the modern GAA club. It has to be more than that. The club today is a social centre for the whole community. In some places, the only one. There are dances and discos, quizzes and fashion shows, entertainment of many kinds. One of the most successful of recent years has been the competition called Score. Score is based on the rich folk traditions of Irish music, song and dance. It echoes the GAA's origins as part of a broad national revival, but it also trades on the national zest for competition. Score is fought out among clubs, counties and provinces, all the way to an All-Ireland final, just like the games.
On Buahor, Gomortas Kjol Urlisha, Balyabuan Nevena.
In urbanised Ireland, and today that means most of the country, the GAA club is a place to meet and to chat. It's a place to conquer the loneliness of modern living. Originally, it was the warmth of community life that made the GAA. Now, it is often the GAA that makes the community. In Cusick Park, Ennis, County Clare, a few miles from the birthplace of its founder, the GAA opens its centenary year. It's a day for ceremonial and for symbols. The attendance of the President of Ireland, Dr. Patrick Hillary, himself a Clareman, makes it a national occasion. The rituals of celebration are duly performed, but behind them lies the central reality of the GAA, the appeal of the games themselves, and the 100 years of folklore they have created. The GAA was born as Ireland was rediscovering its ancient sagas. The result was a love of the heroic. The legendary Cú Chulainn, the hero of Ulster, was a hurler as well as a warrior. And the parade before the big game was like the mustering of armies long ago.
In 1958, 25 years ago,
the voice of Michael O'Hare has been the voice of the games for almost half a century. For millions, he has been the sound of Sunday afternoon around the radio. And nostalgia is a big part of the GAA. Here he introduces the Dublin football team that won the All-Ireland 25 years before. The heroes of the games are honoured and long remembered.
How about a great big folk park well done for them?
All over Ireland there are pubs where the talk is mostly of the games. In Knockrockery, County Roscommon, the host is himself one of the greats, Jimmy Murray.
We were waiting for 44 to come along, and I remember distinctly when I got the Sam Maguire Cup at 44, that was the very first remarks I made. That's right. Now we're beating Kerry, now we're All-Ireland champions, you know. So I think for that reason,
he captained the county in his first All-Ireland win of 1943, and again a year later. And he still has the ball to prove it. Here the past is part of every living day, and players from every county and every decade are summoned to relive their deeds.
Dan O'Keefe from the goal, Joe Cahan full back, Bill Casey centre half back, Sean Brosnan, Paddy Kennedy centre field, Mort Kelly and Eddie Dunn and those kind of fellas in the forward line. Now it was just Jackie Lyon, you know, the great football everyone of them.
Today the big games can be seen by all on television, and folklore won't have to rely on memory alone. But the past is not completely lost. Fragments of old cinema newsreels still survive, and in them we can see yet again some of the teams and the heroes that have become legends. The film record of hurling begins with the 1922 All-Ireland final. Kilkenny were the winners, with Wally and Eddie Dunphy, Dick Grace, Matty Power and Pat Aylward. Among the Tipperary stars were Johnny Lahey, the Powers and the Dwans. Croke Park was still in the early stages of development. and the goal area was dustier than it is now. The All-Ireland of 1931 is among the most famous of all. The teams had to play 3 times before Cork, in the dark jerseys, finally defeated Kilkenny. This is the 3rd meeting. They were both star-studded teams. Cork had Udy Collin, John Collin in goal, Jim Hurley, GAA and Balti Ahern, Dinny Barry Murphy and Jim Regan. For Kilkenny, there was Paddy Phelan, Pat Larkin and Matty Power. In the second half, Paddy DeLay of Cork puts a goal past Kilkenny's goalkeeper, Dermody, but it was disallowed. Missing from the Kilkenny team through injury in this 3rd game was one of the legendary names of hurling, Lowry Marr. But he's seen here, kissing the ring of Dr. Harty, patron of the GAA, at the 1935 All-Ireland against Limerick. Kilkenny won, but Limerick had some great names too. Timmy Ryan, John Mackey, Paddy Scanlon, Garrett Howard. And there was another man on that Limerick team that many regard as the greatest of all hurlers, Mick Mackey of Ahern. He's seen here coming onto the right of picture with the hurley in his left hand before the 1934 All-Ireland against Dublin. With the camera at midfield, it failed to pick out Mick Mackey in that game. But he was the idol of the period, with his hurling genius and his exuberant personality. Limerick were the winners, their last goal scored by Dave Clohessy. The outstanding team of the 40s was 4 in a row Cork. In 1942, their victory was over a Dublin team with Ned Wade, Harry Gray and Mick Butler. Cork were captained by another of the legendary names, Jack Lynch, respected not only as a hurler, but as the first GAA star to become head of government and international statesman. On that day in 1942, Dublin scored 3 goals against Cork. But the Munster champions were too strong in the end. They had Lynch, Christy Ring, Alan Lottie, Jim Young, Sean Condon, Paddy O'Donovan and Derry Beckett. Their last score was a great point from John Quirk. Tipperary were the giants of the late 40s and early 50s. Along with Pat Stakelin here, there was Tommy Doyle, Seamus Bannon, Sean and Paddy Kenny, Tony Brennan, and one of the greatest of all goalkeepers, Tony Redden. Their right half-back, Jimmy Finn, in the number 5 jersey, was one of the defenders of the century. One of the great forwards of that period was Kilkenny's Jimmy Langton. But it was Christy Ring and Cork again for a 3 in a row in the 50s. Willie John Daly, Vincey Toomey, Matty Foohey, Paddy Barry. Then it was Wexford with the 3 Rackards, the Morrisseys, the Kehoes, Ned Wheeler and Tim Flood. Bobby Rackard was one of the great defenders. And Nicky Rackard, one of the forwards of the century, a man of powerful physique and a great goal scorer. And outstanding at full back was Nick O'Donnell. Galway produced a great midfielder in Joe Salmon. But it was Tipperary again as we reached the 60s. Donny Nealon here, and there was Theo English, Tony Wall, Liam Devaney and Michael Marr. John Doyle, one of the great defenders, was still playing to become the second man to win 8 All-Ireland medals. Jimmy Doyle, a forward of great elegance and a deadly free taker. And also from Tipperary, Mick Roach, famous for his stick work. Another of the great goalkeepers was Ollie Walsh of Kilkenny. And as we reached the television age of the 60s, that county produced another of the legendary names.
Eddie Kerr now. And the way that man does it, he didn't even look to see where the ball was going. He knew it was going right over the bar. And here comes Michael Crotty now. And this is Eddie Kerr, and that's the goal.
In spite of Michael Cusack's hopes for the spread of hurling, its All-Ireland champions for nearly 100 years came from the same dozen or so counties. But in 1981, a new county joined the ranks of the champions, Offaly.
Nice feeding there by Pat Delaney. Back from Offaly now. Delaney getting in to take a shot. A shot that's high, a shot that's good. And now there are only 3 points between them. 3 Galway men about to descend on him. Make that 4. In now to Brendan Birmingham. Birmingham inside to Flaherty. Flaherty is inside. And the ball is in and it's a goal. Offaly are in the lead.
Offaly tried again in centenary year at Semple Stadium, Thurles. But the traditional giants, Cork, were too good for them.
Pat Fleury, and there's a nice pass in now. Jimmy Barry Murphy, he shot in it. It's a goal! This is Pat Fleury and this is Kevin Hennessy. Hennessy going right through. Back out now to Jimmy Barry Murphy. Jimmy along the ground. Goal! And Sean Leary going in, a shot, and it is another. No, it's not. It is. It's a goal by Sean Leary. King goal himself.
The record of Gaelic football begins much earlier than that of hurling. 1914, the All-Ireland football final replay between Kerry and Wexford at the Joneses Road ground that had recently been named Croke Park. The Stuart has an old-style hurley stick, hockey-shaped. Wexford, represented by the Blues and Whites Club, lost this game, but went on to become the first county ever to win 4 All-Ireland finals in a row. Kerry were captained by the legendary Dick Fitzgerald, second from left in the front row chatting to the mascot, and they were represented by the Killarney Club. As this was Kerry's second win in a row, they won outright the solid silver cup presented by the Great Southern and Western Railways. The referee was Harry Boland. On the right, Dick Fitzgerald. On the left, the Wexford captain, Sean Kennedy. The game was watched by a record crowd for that time of 20,000 people. It was only 4 years since the sideposts had been abolished, and only 1 since teams had been reduced to 15. But there was still one feature that is unfamiliar to us today. Sideline balls were not kicked, but thrown. The Wexford mascot was Master Lambert. His rival shouts, "Up Kerry," for the camera. And the crowd was already invading the pitch at the end of the game. Wexford again, this time against Kildare in the all-white strip in 1922 at Croke Park. Kildare were to become the glamour side of the 20s, though they played this game without their star, Larry Stanley. In 1921 in Croke Park, 5 bands led the parade for Kildare's replay of the Leinster final against Dublin. Kildare again, but this time against the superb Kerry team of 1930. Kerry had won the All-Ireland, with Kildare surprisingly beaten by Monaghan in the semi-final. So a challenge match was played for charity in a packed Croke Park to decide who were the real All-Ireland champions. On the day, it was Kerry, with stars like John Joe Sheehy, Joe Barrett, Paul Russell, Bob Stack, Mike O'Doyle and J.J. Landers. and the great Con Brasnan, who comes into picture on the left to score a fine point. In 1933, it was Cavan who defeated Galway with the white hoop. The Galway captain was Mick Donlan, with John Dunn, Frank Fox, Brendan Nestor, Mick Higgins and Mick Conair. This was Cavan's first All-Ireland victory, with Jim Smith, Willie Young, Louis Blessing, Sonny McGee and Jack Smallhorn. Cavan again in the drawn final of 1937 against Kerry, who won the replay. Kerry had new stars like Joe Cahan, Sean Brosnan, Dan O'Keefe, the first man to win 7 All-Ireland medals, and J.J. Landers, who scores the goal with the hands that wouldn't be allowed under today's rules. Cavan had big Tom O'Reilly, Paddy Smith, Vincent White and Patsy Devlin. Their only goal was scored by Paddy Boylan. And the game was played with the Cusick stand under construction. In 1942, it was Dublin and Galway in pouring rain. A Galway team with Charlie Connolly, Tom O'Sullivan and Jimmy McGorn, but Dublin were the winners under Captain Joe Fitzgerald. Here too, a unique glimpse of the architect of the modern GAA, General Secretary Paddy O'Keefe, escorting Dr. Walsh, Archbishop of Tuam, to start the game. The great Bobby Beggs of Dublin tries to punch clear, but Sean Thornton gets the point for Galway. The conditions were against good football, with the players bunching and the exchanges tough. The late 40s belonged to Cavan, Tony Tighe and Edwin Carlin, with the camera now getting closer to the players. Peter Donoghue, Mick Higgins, and John Joe O'Reilly. Then it was Meath with one of the defenders of the century, Paddy O'Brien. Paddy Meegan making the run and Peter McDermott in at the finish. Here he is again, the man in the cap, but is saved by Paddy Prendergast of a great Mayo side. Their stars included goal scorer Tom Langan, the Flying Doctor, Pádraig Carney, and Sean Flanagan. Kerry were back in the 50s with Sean Murphy, Jerome O'Shea, Tig Lyne, Paddy Sheehy, son of John Joe, and Jim Brosnan, son of Con. In 1957, Kevin Behan helped Louth to an All-Ireland with Stephen White. And the star of a great Dublin side was Kevin Heffernan, the man with the elusive sidestep. The terrible twins of Galway, Frank Stockwell, and one of the greatest of all footballers, Sean Purcell. Sean O'Neill of Down was another of the greats, and he was a member of a historic team. When Down beat Kerry in the All-Ireland final of 1960, it was the first time that the Sam Maguire Cup went over the border. But Kerry were still there, the versatile Mick O'Dwyer. And the great midfielder and outstanding stylist, Mick O'Connell. Television arrived in time for Galway's 3 in a row in the mid-60s.
now. Liam Salmon doesn't let it go over the sideline. He gets it and sends it up around the right wing to Cyril Dunn. Jack Quinn comes out, tackles him, but the referee waves on the play. The ball across the front of the goal. It's a goal!
Matty McDonough, Enda Colleran, the Donnellan brothers and Seamus Layden. In 1971, a new county became a force in All-Ireland football, Offaly.
Noel Colleran doesn't quite hold on to it. Sean Evans gets it across the goal mouth. Mark Connor's got the ball. It's shot. A goal! A goal! Bobby Doyle, Jimmy Smith.
A great new Dublin team arose in the 70s with a new style manager, Kevin Heffern.
Out along the wing. There's a Dubliner everywhere. This time it's Bernard Roman. And now it's Brian Mullins. And now it's Jimmy Keaveney. And another goal! Another goal for Jimmy Keaveney. An arm ball in towards the goal. Jimmy Deenahan gone back for it. And Jimmy's clearance out again to the...
Then, in 1981, under former star Mick O'Dwyer, Kerry became the first county in 49 years to win 4 football finals in a row.
And it comes up now to John Egan. John Egan up to Owen Liston. Liston back to Egan. And now they're really rolling. Egan across to the far side of the field. Mikey Sheehy. In it goes now. And a goal! The first score and the first goal of the game. Jack O'Shea, the scorer. Kerry leading by 2 points.
1 year later, Kerry were within 2 minutes of a unique 5 in a row. But Offaly, under manager Eugene McGee, had their revenge.
This is Liam Connor, the full-back. A high lobbing, dropping ball in towards the goal mouth. A shot. And a goal! A goal! A goal for Offaly. There was a goal in the game. A goal! Oh, what a goal!
But it was Kerry again in centenary year against their old rivals, Dublin.
Jack O'Shea. Out to the wing to Pat Spillane. Bamboozling the way through. Pat takes a shot and sends it over the bar. A bamboozling piece of football finished by this man. One of the men from Temple, Pat Spillane. Oh, dear, the path went so wrong. And the bomber, this is Ger Power, and this is Jack O'Shea, and it's over the bar. Timmy Dowd gets it out now to John Kennedy, and Ger Power going like a hammer up the far side of the field. But over here, standing all alone, is Owen Liston. Liston high, Liston straight, and Liston over the bar.
Who was the greatest of them all? The arguments will never cease. But 2 men stand out above all the rest, both of them hurlers. One was the great Mick Mackey of Limerick. The other, a man of whom we have a much fuller record as filming of the games increased from Glen Rovers and Cork, Christy Ring. He played his first All-Ireland in 1941 on that great 4-in-a-row team. He went on to dominate hurling for more than 2 decades.
Ring comes chasing across after the ball. He whips it in, and it's over the bar for another point for Cork. Up along the left wing, his stick is blocked down, but he palms it over, and it's a point. With the stick or with the hand, it's all the same.
The first man to win 8 All-Ireland medals, as well as countless other honours. Ring ended by playing with teammates and opponents who weren't even born when he was already a star.
A dropping ball. Ring gets his stick to it. He flicks it, and it's a goal. A great goal. The maestro himself racing across now to the right wing, just in under the Hogan stand. He's 50 yards out. He has it on his stick, and it's a high one. Right in, and it's over the bar for a point for Christy Ring. Ring is on the ground, injured now, but the play goes on. Up along the right wing. Forward sweeping into action. The ball going further up along the right wing. Cut in towards the goal. Now Ring is up again. He's gone racing in. It's a goal. A great goal.
He had style, elegance, and match-winning power. He exemplified for the crowd what the games were all about. Skill, courage, and the performance of heroic deeds. And he drew them in their thousands.
And Jerry O'Sullivan is going to take it. He sends it a high one, but it's a shortish one. Out comes Christy Ring. He doubles on it. It's gone in, and it's over the bar for a point. A free in for Cork, and Christy Ring is going to take it. He bends down, he lifts his strike, and it's a goal!
Sunday after Sunday for 100 years, the people of Ireland have thrilled to their own distinctive games. The GAA has been many things in its time: a cultural revival, a political reality, a social force. But it remains one of the great amateur sporting organizations of the world. Something that grew out of a meeting in a small hotel and the dream of a man from a cottage in County Clare.
Agus be tús a chuir le straithúran seo I Hiordain, chluichí soccer na hÉireann a gar na dóin sin World Cup Gold ar híine aga chlog I Hiordain seo ar TG.